All right, good morning. We're going to spend some time with our green tree pythons here at the Science Center this morning. I'm currently holding our male. Peter, did you want to do any Zoom etiquette stuff before we jump in?
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter, and thank you all for joining us this morning. As I said, I am here at the Science Center in our animal room. And today we're doing a spotlight on one of my favorite snake species that we have here, our green tree python. I'm curious, have any of you been to the Science Center and seen these snakes in person? Here's your close-up view.
I'm seeing some nodding. And some
see if you recognize. Yeah, so I thought it'd be fun to spend some time with them this morning because one of the most common questions we get here is actually, are those snakes real? Green tree pythons are nocturnal. They hang out on their branches during the day and they're very still. So a lot of our guests never actually get to see these snakes moving around. This morning, I uncurled our male from his perch and woke him up a little bit so that we could check out this beautiful snake. I'm hoping you can see the close-up of his head. Do you guys notice anything interesting about it? There's the head. Saw his tongue just split out there. Along the side, you'll notice these pits, these little holes in the side of his face. A lot of times people think those look like teeth. It looks very much like a cartoon snake with teeth down the side, but these are actually heat sensing pits. So those pits allow these pythons to sense the heat of prey around them at night. It's almost like they're seeing in infrared. And so that's a really awesome feature that these snakes have. You'll also notice if we take a look at his tail, which is curled up right now, it is a different color than the rest of his body. So the rest of him is this beautiful green to blend in the trees and the rainforests where they live. But that very tip of the tail is a darker, almost black color. That is called a coggerel lure, and it helps these snakes when they're hunting. So they can move just that little bit of their tail, the tip of their tail, and something, a lizard or a rodent might come along thinking it's a caterpillar or a grub or something yummy to eat. But as soon as that prey gets close, the snake is able to strike. Does anybody know what it means for a snake to strike? So these guys are really cool. When they strike, they make this S shape with their neck, and that gives them lots of force to pounce and grab their prey. They are constrictors, so after they grab it, they wrap it up to eat it. And I'm actually gonna try right now to feed our female a mouse so that y'all can see. I'm gonna put the male back on his perch, and we will see if our female is hungry. I'm not sure that she'll eat today because she is still recovering from laying a bunch of eggs. But that means it's extra important that we offer her food and water as much as possible. So there she is on our screen now on her perch.
Emily, we have someone who's saying that they're not sure what strike means. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so when a snake strikes, basically it means it lunges at its prey, right? It attacks with its mouth and grabs its prey. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks for the explanation, Emily.
All right, and so I'm gonna offer our female a mouse. You'll see, I'm not sure you can tell, but the female here is larger than our male snake. She is, however, much skinnier than she was a couple of weeks ago because she just laid a ton of eggs. So we'll talk about that in a second. Gonna get her a little woken up. Sometimes when I'm feeding these snakes, I will tickle that caudal lure that we talked about to try to get them interested in striking at the food. So we're offering her a mouse here at the Science Center. Oh, she almost took it. All of our snakes eat frozen mice. So you'll see she grabbed it. That was not a full strike, but she did grab the prey, and now she is wrapping it. So she's gonna eat it right like that, hanging upside down on her perch. We'll see, can bring you all a little bit closer. Snakes eat their prey whole, and that means their mouth is really full. So in order to breathe, they have an extra tube that comes all the way to the front of their mouth, the front of their jaw, and that's how they pull air in while their whole mouth is stuffed with a mouse. It looks like she might turn to give us an even better view of this. So I'm really glad to see that our female is eating right now, because 2 weeks ago she laid 9 eggs. She actually laid 15 eggs, but only 9 of them are viable. The rest were what we call slugs, meaning that something happened so that they are underdeveloped and they did not have living embryos inside of them. I'm gonna ask Peter to share an image of the eggs, or actually, can you show us the picture of that female on her eggs?
Sure, I'm going to share my screen now. Can everyone see the green snake here? I'm getting some nods. Okay, great.
So in that image, our female is curled up really tightly around the eggs she just laid. Normally in the wild, green tree pythons maternally incubate their eggs. So the female stays on top of the clutch to protect them and keep them warm and the right temperature. But this year at the Science Center, we decided to take her off her eggs and put them in an incubator. So Peter, can you show us the picture of the eggs in the incubator?
Of course. Here we go.
Thank you. So there are our 9 viable eggs, and they're in the incubator now. We separated them. They were all one mass, and we carefully separated them out, made sure they had a living embryo inside, and put them in the incubator because we can keep the temperature there very consistent and make sure the eggs have what they need to grow and thrive. It's also important when to breed snakes to separate those eggs so that if one goes bad and gets a bacterial infection or anything else, it doesn't spread to the others. A couple of years ago, this snake laid eggs and we allowed her to maternally incubate them, but unfortunately, the whole batch went bad. You can stop sharing your screen now, Peter, because she's making some good progress on this mouse. I would love y'all to see that. So I'm gonna try to move you to the side a bit. One of my favorite things to watch when these guys eat, I'm gonna actually take the camera off the stand really quickly. So I'm stopping the video, but it'll be right back because I wanna give you a little bit of a closer look, if I can, at her enjoying this mouse. So now that we're up close, I'm hoping you'll be able to see her walking her jaw along the mouse. The 2 sides of her jaw can separate. So she's able to help use it to scooch that mouse down into her throat. You can imagine it's sort of a trick to eat something this large without using your hands or cutting it up into smaller pieces. But snakes are really well adapted to do that. So like I said, she laid her eggs 2 weeks ago. That means we have another about 3 weeks-ish to go until we can expect to get some eggs. When we get some hatchlings. When these snakes hatch, rather than being green, they're actually red and yellow. So, and then as they mature, they get this lovely green color. That's because when they're young, they spend more time on the ground. And so yellow and red are better for camouflage. Versus as adults, when they're hanging out in the trees, green is the best color to go with. Does anyone have questions or observations about our green tree pythons? Yes, we are. She's
some people think it's going back and forth between very cool and very gross.
Yes, I'm seeing that. So it might seem pretty gross, but I'm really glad she's getting the nutrients she needs to recover from laying all of those eggs. She's doing one last effort. You can see that lump sort of moving down her throat here. So that's the mouse. She's still got a little bit left to eat up top. Let me see if I can get the camera right in there with her as she finishes up. Two folds. No, not gonna work. Ooh, and I can see that tracheal tube coming out so that she can breathe. You see her tongue, and right under that is a little tube that's opening and closing. That's how she's breathing right now as she swallows this big bite. If you are interested in learning more about our green tree pythons and their eggs, we were able to take a video as we were removing the eggs from the nest and getting them prepared for the incubator. So Peter will put that link right now into our chat, and I invite you to check it out. It's very cool and informative. The camera work is a little bit shaky because we had a lot going on at once. But in that video, Colin, our curator of live exhibits, talks more about snake eggs and what they need to survive and thrive.
Trey and Corinne, do you have a comment or a question?
For more.
Go ahead and unmute yourself.
We have a picture to share.
Cool. I'd love to see that once we're done looking at the snake today. Oh, that's very cool. I like that snake. Nice.
All right. So she's getting curled back up on her perch there. And we will try to give regular updates about the status of our green tree python eggs. Right now, they're all doing really well in the incubator. I'm going to move over and show you our male's pose right now because he looks a little goofy. I think he's not too pleased that I disturbed him this morning. But here he is. These snakes, we offer food about once a week. I'd say usually the female eats. Our male eats every 2 weeks or so, I'd say. He's got a little bit less reproductive work to do, so that's okay. And we're just happy when that female eats. When she was gravid and carrying eggs, she turned a little bit blue. She had a bluish tint. So after our snakes mated, we were watching really carefully to see if she turned that blue, because we were really hoping to get some eggs. All right, I know our green tree pythons are eager to get back to their daytime job of sleeping. Does anyone have any questions or ideas to share before we log off this morning?
Oh, Trey, Corinne, do you have another comment you want to make?
Do pythons sleep in the day or night?
That's a great question, Trey. So these particular green tree pythons are nocturnal, meaning that they sleep during the day and hunt at night.
Good
That's
question.
why those heat sensing pits are really useful. It lets them sense their surroundings and prey better. Yeah.
When snakes are sleeping, how do you wake them up?
Well, typically once I start handling them, they wake up just like you would. They'll also wake up to loud noises, things like that, any change or disturbance in their surroundings. Our snakes are used to sleeping through a lot because we often have many visitors in the building. It's hard to tell sometimes that a snake is sleeping. They don't close their eyes the same way that you and I do, but they do have a film that goes over their eyes.
Could you say a little clearer, Izzy and Mia? I couldn't quite hear you. I think you're not quite coming through. I think your audio connection's not working. You can type your question out if you'd like in the chat and we'll be able to see it. Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments about the snakes? Does the snake have a predator, Emily?
That's an awesome question, Izzy and Mia, and I think it's really important to think about. So a lot of people are really scared of snakes, and we know that they're very good predators themselves. But you'll notice that snakes often have lots of camouflage coloring and are really good at blending into their surroundings. And that's because there are also lots of things out in the wild that like to eat snakes, right? So particularly if we think about like large birds of prey or bigger mammals that would like to make snakes a meal. I'm not sure about green tree pythons in their native habitat exactly what their predators would be, but they definitely have them, and that's why this coloring is so important. These guys live in rainforests, so I'm thinking there's probably lots of birds and things that would love to eat a snake, because as we know, our rainforests have lots and lots of different species. They host huge biodiversity.
Yep. Corinne has one more question. Let's hear your last question, Corinne.
Are snakes harmless?
Are they harmless? Was that the question?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's a good question, Corinne, and it definitely depends on your perspective. Snakes are certainly not harmless to small rodents or eggs or lizards or even sometimes smaller snakes. And it depends whether the snake is venomous or not, if it can subdue a larger mammal like a human. In general, our snakes at the Science Center are fairly well socialized. They have all been bred in human care, and we work to handle them and make them comfortable so that they don't strike people. So you saw I started off holding our male green tree python, and that went okay for me. We have some snakes that are actually really friendly. Our corn snake is a nice breed that has a good disposition. And we have some other snakes that we can bring out onto the floor to meet visitors. Some of our snakes are a little bit dicier. So this female actually is the only snake in our collection that I've been bit by. So they will strike at humans if they feel threatened. That's why it's always really important to treat snakes and any other animals with a lot of respect. Be aware of where their mouths are. If they start hissing a lot, it's a good idea to maybe back off a bit. So as long as you're responsible around them, these snakes are pretty harmless to humans. There are certainly snakes that can cause more damage if they bite you and inject venom, but normally that only happens when people are not respecting their habitats. Looks like she's curling up to sleep. Are there any more questions before we let our snakes get some rest? All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll be back again tomorrow morning at 10:30. And I'm going to ask you all to do a little bit of an engineering challenge. For that, you'll need newspaper, probably some tape would be useful. And if you can spare an egg or two, that will add an extra layer of fun. All right, we're going to be building towers out of newspaper, which is more challenging than it might sound. So I hope to see you all tomorrow morning. And thank you so much for joining us.
Bye. Bye.